Hi, everybody. Welcome to Elevated Intel. My name is Jody James, and it is 4:20 on Friday. Uh, as you may be able to tell, Colette Florido with CR World is going to be my guest today. Her background is still up, so I'm sure that she'll be popping on with us shortly. But I'd like to welcome you. My name's Jody James, and today is Friday, May 22nd, 2026, and this is Elevated Intel at 4:20 with Florida Cannabis Action Network. Today we're going to talk about high society. We're going to talk about your cannabis wellness. We're going to dive into what's happening at the federal and state level with your money and your vote. But first, we're going to talk about what's new in science. Alex Johnson from Jacksonville is going to join me. Alex, did you want to hop on and tell us some more about the science? Hi, Alex.
How are ya?
Excellent. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Got
Do
some
you have
more.
plans? Do you have
What was
plans
it?
for the weekend?
Um, Working,
Working is good. Cannabis working?
cannabis working, and getting to work from home with the show with the animals and yeah.
All right, very good. We're boating. It
Ooh, that
is
sounds fun.
Memorial Weekend, and we're going to get the boat out. It's going to be fabulous. I have lots, but of course, Sunday's going to be an afternoon of work day for me. We'll get into that a little bit later. Still got some work to do because, the train just keeps on running down the tracks, right? But
Always, always.
this is a pretty exciting time. Federal government, of course, is starting to really value the science of cannabis and what's happening. And I appreciate that you are kind of keeping a feel for the science with this. I confess I didn't see any science this week. So sock it to me, girl.
There. So maybe didn't come out this week, but these have come out in 2026.
Okay.
Um, there was a research that found it's talking about THC and pain, and the research found
Okay.
that THC actually blocks pain signals at the nerve level. So it's not through the brain, not through the CB1 receptors, but actually calming down two major sodium channels, which are the same channels that are targeted by local anesthetics. So I'm sure we've all heard people that talk about they get pain relief without feeling euphoric, and this may be why. So very fascinating to see science come through and show things that we're already experiencing.
So I used to tell people with my fist, I'd say opiates don't quite fit the receptor, right? And because they don't quite fit the receptor, that was kind of why you continue to need more and more opiates, and opiates never really, but cannabis kind of really fit, kind of like right, slid right into the like lock and key perfectly. So now they're saying this is actually happening at the nerve level.
Yes, yes,
Fascinating. So I
yeah.
wonder what they're going to say. We were, I used to say, no, by used to, I probably mean 25 years ago. Cannabis got to the point for me, it was almost like snake oil because people said it was good for everything. And this is probably mid 90s. And I had just gotten to the point where it didn't matter to me if it was medicine or not. I didn't want to see anybody else go to jail. And I just couldn't believe that everything they said the cannabis was good for was good for. Now I knew it reduced my pain. I knew it impacted um my state of being, and my state of being was better. I knew that I had less anxiety. I mean, I knew those things, but when they started talking about, Crohn's disease and inflammation in the gut, and I just didn't get it. Of course, then Dr. Raphael Mechoulam introduced the endocannabinoid system, and that we had these receptors all over our body. So I wonder, have you seen anything about what's happening at the receptor level? So is it, are
Yeah,
we
it's
are we going to dig into that?
Yeah, we are going to dig into that. I'm like, funny, you should say
Sure.
that.
Tell me more.
So the other study that came out this year, and it's kind of reiterating something that we have known or looking to know. It's why THC tolerance builds up over time. So
Okay.
this study in the Nature Neuroscience highlighted that THC exposure leads to CB1 receptor downregulation. So the
Okay.
brain temporarily reduces the number of CB1 receptors available on the surface of the cell. And of course, my question is if I have fewer receptors, how does using more cannabis do anything?
Okay.
And the answer is that the downregulation doesn't mean gone. It just means that there's fewer receptors, not zero. And when there's fewer receptors available, you need more THC molecules in the system to activate the smaller number that remains so that the effect's still possible, just takes more to get there. The good news is, and we all know that tolerance breaks can help reset the THC exposure. And this is because when that occurs, those receptors come back up to the surface of the top of the cell, and you're able to use less to get the same effect.
So, but the effect you're referring to in this case is the euphoria effect, right?
It doesn't specify I'm assuming that is the effect we're talking about. That was not specified in the article.
So I think this is fascinating, and I'm glad to dig into this a little bit, and I hope that the audience has some things to share with us about this because I would love to know more. And we do have Steve Thal, our producer, is monitoring our Facebook Live page. So if you'd like to weigh in on this, Steve will send us something in the chat so you can be sure to weigh in on it. Well, I stopped getting euphoria a long time ago. I very rarely feel, but I also don't feel impaired, right? So the effect, I'm not trying to use enough cannabis on the regular that I'm impaired. I'm trying to use enough cannabis on the regular that effects that I want, the medicinal effects. And so the pain relief, it was never happening in the brain anyhow.
Right. Some of it. So, and I think that's part of it, is we see a lot of patients that over time things build up, even for anxiety. All of a sudden, it takes more cannabis to reduce their anxiety or more cannabis to reduce their pain, which now we're seeing there's other factors with the pain. And I'm curious if there's other factors with the anxiety. We saw hormones play a role last week. So I think there's still a lot more that's happening in the background that we're unaware of.
Well, I totally love what you said last week, and I wasn't on the segment. It was you and Colette working last week, and it was a beautiful segment. But I so wanted to interject because I have always agreed that there is more magic to cannabis still than science, and that has to do with where we're at in prohibition and where we're at with our understanding of whole plant medicine, not just cannabis. So. Thank you very much for that. We're going to continue to unpack what's happening with your body and cannabis, and I thank you for following the science. Colette Florido is going to pop on now and join us for a few minutes. Colette, if you're available, I think this is an excellent segue to talk about having some weird technical stuff. Did I lose Colette? Uh, Colette Florido is going to come back with us, and she's going to talk about what's happening with the wellness. Last week, during Colette and Alex's segment, they talked about a number of things that can happen with cannabis that can positively impact your mental health. I guess we're having some technical difficulty. Oh, Colette, positively impact your mental health. One of the things is that so many people who use cannabis report that cannabis impacts their sleep. We also understand from reports back that it is going to, produce reduction in your anxiety. Alex and I spoke about a little bit about the reduction in anxiety. Wow. I'm going to call Colette one more time. Okay. Let's talk about politics. Steve, you want to jump on? And when Colette is ready, we will bring her back. We're having
Sure.
some really
Hello
weird
there,
technical
everybody.
different. Come on in, Steve. Fabulously weird day today. A little bit of
Right.
this, a bit of that.
My circuit breakers popped like 3 times. I've dropped the call already. It's never happened before. Everything's just going wonky tech wise.
We are totally so hot that we are burning breakers at your house.
Yep,
Sweet.
absolutely. So,
So thanks for popping in today.
absolutely. I was actually going to talk about the Virginia governor and how she just vetoed a cannabis bill. And then, as you so pointed out, that there are two sides to every story, and I'm going to be honest, I actually don't know how I feel about this anymore.
So talk about it.
Because, yeah, let's start off with the first story. Was the Virginia governor vetoed the marijuana bill that was proposed by the legislature, and it had something like 65 to 71%. I don't remember the exact percentage, but it was a high number. And and my initial thought was, what gives these governors the right to just squash on what everybody wants? But then I found another source that shows the explanation of why, and I read that, and I was like, you know what? If I were her, I probably would have done the same thing because it's really good reasons.
Okay.
So
Virginia is an interesting test case. First of all, Virginia has a very limited marijuana program right now, right? You have your traditional hemp that you can get through the, converted and low THC market. Virginia allows home grow, right? So you can grow your own marijuana in Virginia. And my understanding was that the goal of lawmakers was to create a system so that people could purchase it legally and didn't have to grow your own, right? Is that kind of where you started in the story?
uh, right. That's exactly where I started in the story.
So why did the governor of Virginia
Okay,
decide to
so
veto the bill?
her big issues was that the rush timeline. It's just too short of a timeline to enact anything with clarity and thought, intentional thought instead of just rushing together. She did not like that they were re-adding criminal penalties for cannabis consumers that were taken away. And
Right.
that one right there, you know me, and nobody should go to jail
100%.
for it. This should not
100%.
be a thing.
Right.
So that alone, I agree with her for vetoing it. Absolutely. Thank you for standing up for what's right and not just letting something go for money.
Well, and so this is a whole issue. I think that we're starting to see a return to the idea that we should be putting people before profits, that we should make sure that we don't have monopolies in this new industry, and that as we roll out sales and marketing, this is going to be a huge boon for somebody. Now, how are we going to and who's going to benefit from this plan? Of course, I always came from kind of the grassroots street level. It's our plan, everybody should have it. I still envision a world where everyone can have access to the cannabis plant. They can do it without fear of losing their home or losing their children or losing anything, because you shouldn't lose anything from a plant that has such benefit for us, right? But
Absolutely.
I did see that. And at the end of the day, kind of what the definition of legalize means is somebody gets it and somebody doesn't, right? Because legalize is the parameters by which you get to do something. That's what legal means. And when you start setting parameters on what you get to do, then you have to set penalties. As we move closer and closer to legalization, and I mentioned this, Minnesota just blew me away. And I think this was probably episode 5 or 6, right, when Minnesota legalized. And one of the first articles I saw out of Minnesota with their legalization plan, I even say Minnesota and kind of that Minnesota. You just gonna hear it. When legalization happened in Minnesota, one of the first stories we saw coming out of there is how many people were arrested for personal possession of cannabis because they had it in their car and not in their trunk. And we have legalized it. We created rules. And once you got outside the rule, you were still arresting somebody. So very interesting. One of our pro-legalization Floridians, Democrat from your area, actually got in a lot of trouble this last week. I don't know if you have seen
I
that
have
recently.
not. I'd love to hear about it.
Angie Nixon, who has introduced legalization bills, she's kind of a controversial African American Democrat from the Jacksonville area, was aggravated last week, the week ending May 15th, about the new congressional maps. So Florida, Hector mentioned last week that Florida had new congressional maps, and part of what happened with these congressional maps is that we really did away with what had been protected minority districts, and not just African American districts, but Hispanic districts. This had all come out of the 1960s Civil Rights Acts. And in Florida, our fair districts went one step further and said you had to protect some of these districts, and you couldn't have blatantly political districts drawn by, boundaries. You can't look at how many Republicans are in it or how many Democrats are get it. That's against the rules. So one of the folks who work for the governor's office, the new congressional maps were just hand delivered to the legislature by the governor's office. And in the midst of testimony, the guy who ultimately was in charge of drawing the maps, and this is the map drawing process is supposed to happen every 10 years with redistricting.
Okay.
It is a fascinating process. The last time that it officially happened, they basically sequestered the entire staff in Tallahassee that was working on the maps. So they didn't want anybody influencing the maps. They didn't want the people who were drawing the maps to even go out to dinner for 4 months, right? Because you might run into somebody who's going to inadvertently influence the maps.
Right.
But
Stuff like that in the Navy for selection boards, they have to sequester for however long it takes to select who's getting promoted.
100%, right. So that you can't be unduly influenced once you have the list in front of you. So the guy got on and testified and said, well, we drew these maps and we're sure they're good maps. But in the end, when the districts were close, we did look at whether there were more Republicans or Democrats, and we did look at political lines. And Angie Nixon went nuts. I'm literally she said, my blood is boiling. The blood of my ancestors is boiling. So it was some beautiful little speeches that she gave. But she got out on the floor of the House of Representatives with a pink bullhorn and raised a little cane. In the middle of debate, the Florida legislature has censured her now, so she's in big trouble. They passed the maps anyhow, but Angie Nixon announced that she is running for U.S. Senate. Right after the maps were passed, Angie scheduled a sit-in the governor's office. She went to the governor's office with a plan to stay there until he agreed to repeal the maps, and instead he had her arrested. So there will be more to hear. I was laughing because you're talking about the Virginia governor absolutely looking at all sides of this thing and then doing the right thing. And then we have the Florida governor who looked at what was politically expedient for him and his cronies and did that. And I'm like, wow, what a difference a state governor can make.
Why can't we just be good people? Like I just don't understand. I don't understand, Jody. It blows my mind.
What's going on? And what does good people look like? That's the other thing. So I do have a number of things that I'm following this week that I think that our viewers are going to be interested in. Of course, Florida has been back in session. The Florida legislature has been back in session for special session E. Hector mentioned that last week. So this is our 5th special session. What I didn't do was look to find out how much money it costs taxpayers. But I did mention that this week we were going to talk about your your money and your vote. So you get to choose who you're going to vote for. And we've certainly told you that there is a candidate for U.S. Senate who is willing to go to the mat, not only for legalization, but also for the idea of doing what she thinks is right. She'll go on, take it to jail.
Thank you
She
very
is,
much, Angie, for standing up for what's right. I appreciate you. There are people everywhere that appreciate you. We're all cheering you on. Even if nobody's telling you to your face that, trust me. I want to tell you to your face. We're cheering you on.
and we'll see. We may have to get you to, get into the voting booth and make a decision. Of course, Angie's first race is going to be the primary to see if she gets the primary nomination as a Democrat. I took a deep dive into what was happening with special session E this week. This is the budget session that we've been watching for. And of course, one of the things that we've fought really hard for that I know is important to you right now is veterans, what we're going to do with our veterans and how veterans are going to get access to the medicine. And we were a little concerned because there was a little bit like $6 million that they may or may not get. So I did a dive into the budgeting for this week and was just kind of astounded. Turns out that the Office of Medical Marijuana Use has asked for $42.5 million for their budget this year. About 12 million of that is going straight into salaries. There's some money for that contract for the cards that they're going to get. There's $9.3 million, so almost 20% of their budget is going to go to FAMU. There's another $1.5 million that's going to go to the consortium. So I'm like, okay, $44 million is going to get spent. And then I did some math on the 950,000 patients that we have. And would you believe that our medical marijuana program is bringing in over $71 million just in card fees alone? Another 11 plus million dollars every year.
Wow.
From the MMTCs and their licensing fees. So basically, we're looking at an agency that is bringing in over $85 million off of sick people trying to get access to medicine. So I think we're going to have a lot of fodder when we go back to Tallahassee next year. And we're like, really? Do you need to double your money on the back of the sickest of the sick Floridians? Because, they're making very careful to make sure that only really, needy people get access to this medicine. So I thought that was pretty fascinating. They still have $500,000 in the budget for domestic hemp eradication. So that's a thing. I thought that was pretty interesting. We're still spending money on eradication. It's just fascinating. They do have an amazing logo. We'll put it up. It's got a dragon on it. It's very cool. And there was some interesting stuff in the budget, though. So we have a budget, and the state has a budget, just like a household will with line items. They were going to have this much for insurance, and we're going to pay this much for outside counsel, and we're going to spend this much for this and that thing for the other. And then they have a document that is created that goes with the budget. And this particular document talks about, they call it a proviso, provisions that have to be implemented in order for these agencies to get their money. And that $9 million that FAMU is getting, the legislature is asking them to start reporting quarterly on exactly where they're spending that money, how many people are being touched, what research is being funded. So I think FAMU is going to have a hard time moving forward justifying that $3.9 million that they're getting. And certainly I would expect that the legislature isn't loving 20% of the medical marijuana budget going to one university for one targeted population when, there's 27 million people in the state that need marijuana education. The other thing that was important is that there's language in the current budget draft that would repeal the advertising language. I know that's been very important to a lot of the constituents that we work with. We all like getting coupons. We all like getting swag at events, and they were really trying to cut down on that. So glad to see that in the budget. I did see that we're going to have a special election in Senator Hooper's district. That's Pasco and Pinellas. So you never know. We may very well see some new faces in the Florida House and Senate that are going to be a little bit more pro-cannabis. And we're going to ask each and every one of our supporters to get out there and make sure that they are talking to these folks. I think that has Colette made it back? Let's see if Colette's ready to come on and talk about wellness and mental health and terpenes.
Hey.
Colette, we missed you.
I'm here.
Excellent.
Sorry.
That's all right. I had a great intro for you, though. Set you right up. I had this amazing on-ramp for you. It was going to be smooth. Last week, you did a great job telling us about some of the things that cannabis and how some of the ways that cannabis impacted our mental health.
Yep.
So one of them was sleep, and one of them was. Give me that list again. Do you have the whole list in front of you again?
I have the whole list. Yep. I think sleep was at the top of everyone's list.
Always.
I also talked about just breathing, being able to breathe and take a breath. And that is both like the cannabis can physically help, and it's a bronchodilator, so it's known to open up airways. But just the idea of relieving the anxiety and shaking out some of the stress and anxiousness, that's really an important piece. And then we had pain management, really trying to be able to move more and be more mobile, play the sports and the games that you love, being able to get out into the garden, be responsible for the plant, and have something that needs you and that you can love on, and then having that good gut health. All important pieces.
All important parts. And today you were going to do a little bit of a deep dive and let us know about some of the terpenes. Used to, it was indica in the couch,
right?
Sativa, energy and brain, and so
Arriba sativa.
Arriba sativa. There you go. I have a little plaque here on my wall that says sativa to change the things I can, indica to accept the things I can't. So, but I think we know a little bit. We know a little bit more now.
Yeah, and CBD to cope with it all, and and we just, I teach a class on Fridays for caregivers of those with a dementia-related illness. This is heavy stuff. You go in as a caregiver, and nobody interviewed you for this job. You didn't actually ask for it. All these responsibilities that you have as a caregiver. And the way I always explain it to them is that it's so important that you take care of you, because it's usually, gotta have to have enough gas in the tank. No, this is, you have to have enough oil in the engine or you're going to burn out the engine. And the idea behind mental wellness is that if you don't take care of your brain and your mental wellness, you're going to miss, you're somewhere along the way, you're going to burn out. It's just as important as the rest of your physical health. So the idea is, well, where do you start? Going into a 3-day weekend, I'm hopeful for the people who are going to get the chance to sleep in. I think to be able to rest and recover is one of the first ways to repair all the neural pathways in your brain. You've got to get good sleep. And so the idea of what makes the plant so helpful is not just that there's CBD or THC, but it's the terpenes that are naturally found all around and created in nature. And we already know how to use them. We already know. If you said, okay, I need to get a good night's sleep. Should I put lavender essential oils or should I put lemon essential oils? I bet most people already have a guess, right? They're going to go for lavender. The idea of having something calming like lavender, we already know that that's what it's for. But but it very much is part of the plant. You know, it's got the ability for more of a sedative property, anxiety relief, and the terpene itself, linalool, that's found in lavender, is known to also have antidepressant qualities. And so just using a cannabis, a part of cannabis that has linalool as one of its terpenes, can be really helpful in supporting a good night's sleep. So now when you're going to your medical dispensary, you're looking for those types of terpenes because I want to get a better night's sleep. I want to repair my brain and my body and let it rest and let the cells rejuvenate. That's the linalool. On the other hand, when you talk about just breathing, you've got to you still want to have that relaxation, but perhaps having a little bit of alertness, because we're going into the holiday and we want to relax a little bit, but we've got to focus in. So I like A-pinene, and A-pinene, B-pinene, it's from pine. So, you know, the idea of going out into the forest and taking a deep breath, there's really something to it. It's not just kind of like, you know, it's not just the woo-woo part of it, because it is pretty cool to just get out and be able to walk around in nature. But
some
really,
woo-woo.
yeah, there is. But there's science behind the woo-woo, because if you can get some of the apinene that comes naturally from a pine plant, or it might come from rosemary or sage, things in your own garden, you can see increased alertness. You can see a little bit more energy. It's known for its anti-inflammatory and antiseptic properties. So when you look at how that terpene could be effective to you, and just taking a deep breath and, you know, really letting the stress and anxiety of this, whatever, day, week, month, year, letting some of that go this weekend with the holiday. That's what I would be looking for, is 2 terpenes like that to give us some sleep, and then the chance to get rid of some of that inflammatory and stress, and hopefully recharge your body by doing mental wellness.
That's
exactly.
it. My mentor going back a bajillion years was a woman by the name of Joan Bello. She wrote a book called Benefits of Marijuana. And in it, she started to touch on breathing and how breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth, starts to change your left brain, right brain, which is your fight and flight. So most of us spend the majority of our time in fight and flight mode, whether you realize it or not. You know, these are systems happening in your body that you can think you have things well under control, and yet your body is screaming, "Get here!"
Right.
Which is why we
it
should all be
happens.
outside on a weekend like today in a place like Florida. Get me out of here.
But you're right. If you could take those deep breaths, you're physically making a change. And if you can activate the nervous system, now you can say, "Hey, I'm okay. We're okay. It's okay.
We're okay. We're okay."
Right. But it's taking a physical step. And I think sometimes when we get into an anxious mode, like, you just kind of get frozen and don't know really what to do. And so the idea of taking a breath has a lot of value. And I talked about it last week as well, the idea of even just having those terpenes in the air. Like I said, when we've decarboxylated, or even just being able to smell them, quite literally, if you've got, you know, the fresh flower that you've gotten from the dispensary, being able to crack it open and smell it, your body can tell you what it needs. So sometimes
100%.
This one, no, this is the one that's calling me today, because the terpenes in there are doing all the talking to what your body needs. It's really fun.
That really is the horrible part about modern medical marijuana. Well, no, I think it's modern medical marijuana, really. And modern medicine, you know, marijuana is starting to follow modern medicine. Thank you very much, Schedule 3. And if you have gotten a prescription lately, you know, it comes in the bag that's stapled, that has the stuff on the outside of it. And on the inside is the box that has the bag, that has the, you know, the other stuff. Even to get to like my dog's Brevecto, I have to go through 7 layers of security tape and boxing.
Yeah.
Where in Maine, and I came back from Maine last year with my mama, Make America Maine again, because their medical program, I thought, was so sophisticated. Now, of course, Cynthia Brewer was with me when I did that episode, and she was like, "Well, wait a minute, you don't have to test medical marijuana in Maine," and that's true. The
Well, there's
adult
that.
recreational market had to be totally tested. Well, you don't need to test something if you know who the grower is.
But it was just, there was something about being in Washington and being able to see the jars
In a
and
jar.
open the jar and smell what's in the jar and go, oh, yeah, that's what my brain tells me I need. And that part of the
100%.
medicine is dropping off. You know,
100%.
we've left that sense off when it comes to what the medical recommendation. I mean, we're saying so much as you should get this type, but you're not letting the nose participate in that.
Right. And it may be that, lime, the lemon one,
The
the
limonene.
lemon one, that one, uh, a tiny bit, yes. A tiny bit too much, no.
That's
It
true
makes you
because that
very
can cause
unhappy.
it can cause some anxiety. It's a very energizing
100%.
to the point where just like caffeine can be a little too much. Too much
Too
of
much.
that could be can cause a little more anxiety. And that's why some people have felt the effect of cannabis for them was too, it was like, oh, it made me very jittery. I'm willing to bet they probably had a lot of limonene in that particular varietal, what they were using.
Me too. Yeah, no, Maine, Washington, Maine too, big jars of
Yeah.
cannabis and, picking it out with the
The
chopsticks or
tongs. Yep.
yeah, loved it. Absolutely loved it. And you could smell it, you could check out, see what it was that you
And look
like.
at it. To be able to see
100%.
the difference in the plants. I mean, we're just talking about smells today, but to be able to look at the difference between this one that's got lots of purple in it, whereas this one has lots of orange in it, we could go down a whole path of how those things are going to affect you too. So it's this whole combination of what's in each varietal of the plant that you're looking at, not just how much THC or how much CBD is in it. Yes, that's important, but like all of these other things that, and unfortunately we don't get to visually inspect it to see, oh,
No,
this is, look at all
no.
these terpenes, look at, look at the crystals, how it glistens. Um, you
Right.
know,
Astounding.
yeah.
Astounding. Well, thank you very much for that. Alex is anxious to get back in and have some conversation about this. It looks like we're going to talk more about terpenes next week. Am I right, Alex?
Sure. I love terpenes.
Well, let's go ahead and I wanted to talk a little bit about bring my guests back on, Steve. Colette, Alex, if you'd like to join me on camera as we talk about kind of what's happening federally. I know that everybody's paying a lot of attention to what's happening federally, but I wanted to start with some of what's happening locally. We talk here pretty regularly about some of the things that Florida Cannabis Action Network has been doing. And, I was looking at my calendar. This has been a great month for me personally. I thoroughly enjoyed starting out the month with some of our Florida Can folks at Cedar Key. And I confess, gang, some of our people have already reserved their bungalows for next year. So there will be a fifth annual Tiki Fest, and the dates have already been announced. And the best bungalows are already going fast. Putting that out there just so everybody knows. But we did have a great time with that. And at the end of the month, some of us are going to be together next weekend. As a matter of fact, I had kind of a panic looking at the schedule. What are we going to be doing at 420 next weekend? We're going to be at the Florida Medical Marijuana, Florida Cannabis, wait a minute, Florida Medical Cannabis Conference and Expo, fmcce.org. I think it is, can still get tickets but they are going fast. Nearly 200 people registered. There is some discount codes running around. So if you are with the doctor's office and would like that discount code, you can get that from True Leave. If you are with Florida Cannabis Action Network and you would like to use our discount, I think it's 10 or 20% on your registration, and that is put in FLCAN in your when you check out. The code is good for the conference costs, but if you want continuing medical education credits, that is provided by a third party, and so you'll need to go ahead and pay a little extra for those CMEs. So what are we going to do about elevated intel next week?
Hey, I just want to say, first of all, if you are listening and you're like, my doctor should really know about this, or maybe one of their staff has been talking to you and is interested and wants to learn more, this is the thing to send them to. It's over in Orlando. It's pretty accessible from around the state. It's going to have lots of different content about uses and practice, and the people who they're going to want to connect with afterwards for follow-up, because you can only cover so much. But see, continuing education, they need that anyway. So take a minute, send them the information, invite them to make sure that they're staying up on all of the exciting new things that we're talking about regarding cannabis.
It's going to be pretty exciting. FMCCE.com, Steve, if you can get that into the chat for people who miss it, so that we can make sure that folks are going to get that. You had a great week this week, though, right? Because Jacksonville's got a whole lot of fun stuff going on. Tell us more about what you guys are doing. Steve came up to me and said, we've got to talk about high society, because it was great.
Awesome.
What is high society for those who are just popping in and don't know? What is high society, Alex?
High Society is a cannabis community event. It's a safe space for patients, people that want to learn more about cannabis, dispensaries, however you're tied to cannabis or you want to learn about cannabis, safe place to ask questions, interact with people, just build community. That's what it is. We're hanging out, building community. We've got education. Yeah. It's
Steve,
So-
you are in the area. Where did you first find out about high society? From here, or did you hear
No,
about
I
it?
found out through FLCAN,
Excellent.
getting
Okay.
to know Alex. So she left out a whole ton of stuff. She's
Okay.
talking about it like it's this educational event, and you're gonna let's put on our hats and start taking notes. Look, we're at a bar and we're hanging out on the patio, openly smoking pot and just having a good
Consuming
old time.
medicine
Sorry, there was a mosquito.
or sharing hemp.
Yes.
That is
Yes.
consuming medicine or sharing
safe
hemp.
place for
Yes.
patients to use their
Yes.
medicine. Yep.
Yes. And it's a good time where everybody can connect and have a positive experience in a world where we're just having negative experiences so often, right? It's great. We had like 6 people immediately express interest in FLCAN last night. I think, Alex, you said we had like up to 45 people throughout the night that came.
Throughout the night. Yeah. No, last night was a big night. That was our biggest night in Orange Park so far. We've seen numbers like that in San Marco, but to be our 3rd month into Orange Park last night was exciting, and we met even more people who were at the venue, not with our group, that came out to learn about our group and said they'll be joining us there next month and at some of our other locations too. So.
Outstanding. Well, so if you're watching from the Jacksonville area, that's really a great way to plug into your local community and hear just a few minutes every couple weeks about what is happening in the politics and what's happening in the realm of activism, and yet really be able to meet people who have like minds and feel like you're in a safe place to express yourself. So that's pretty exciting. So that happens a couple times a month. this month, the next weekend, we're going to be together as Florida Cannabis Action Network in Orlando. That's at the Rosen Center for the Florida Medical Cannabis Conference and Expo. And then the following week, Colette, you've got us in Zephyr Hills. Do you want to tell us more about the Zephyr Hills event coming up?
We're partying in Zephyr Hills. You know, it's just what we do.
Super.
On Sundays.
Somebody's
Perhaps
got to
there'll
do
be
it.
some Apinene in the air. We will be in we're in a weekend at Benny's, like the movie, but not. Benny is one of our
Everybody's leaving on their own power.
right. Benny, exactly. Benny is our is one of our members and has graciously offered to let us hang in on his property. And so it's kind of a it is a potluck, or did I say potluck? And there is a I stumbled. So it's potluck. And we're also going to have bring your own chair and just hang out, family friendly, because we're very focused on doing family oriented things here. We got, people have families, so we're going to have a nice time on a Sunday afternoon, bring some food, hang with some people in the Tampa and West Coast region. I know we'll be seeing some folks coming from Carla and from the Care office coming down, and I know folks have been registering, so looking forward to it. Should be fun.
Yeah, Benny is our newest member of our board of directors. He joined at the annual meeting in Cedar Keys, so excellent addition. Benny came to us. We first met Benny when he got involved in industrial hemp and was very
Yep.
interested in how hemp can save the world.
Yeah, Benny and
So,
I spoke at a few, we'd run into each other at speaking engagements around town. Hey, how you doing? How's it going? So it was nice to be working in this capacity. He's been helping us on the membership committee. So as folks are joining on as new members, they're probably going to hear from Benny, which is my favorite part. They're going to hear from him, but he always says it falls on deaf ears when you're talking to him, some of his jokes.
Benny is hearing impaired, so you will likely text with Benny, but we're thrilled to have Benny as part of our team. We're limiting to 40 people, so make sure you register in advance. We expect to have well over that number of people wanting to come. It is private property. So bring a friend and let us know how many people are coming. We did put out a little email about it. It's potluck, so make sure that you label what's in whatever it is that you bring.
Yeah,
And
basic, like, help us out here because I don't eat gluten and this person doesn't eat that. So whatever you've put into this has to be known to everybody. Again, family friendly.
And Timothy Leary said never alter someone's consciousness without their permission.
There you
So,
go.
we want to be very conscientious of whatever it is that we're putting. In the email we did, don't be cheesy, right? Instead of going out and getting a cheese plate, prepare your favorite finger food. So it's gonna be really, it is just for fellowship and friendship. We won't be talking a lot of heavy politics. I think that Orange
Not
County
near me, at least. You will
high
not
society,
find me talking politics over there.
high society has really set the bar high for friendship and fellowship. I also understand that we're going to be setting up a regular game night down in the Fort Pierce area. So yeah,
Oh,
game night. A few of our members are getting together now for games, and they've found a venue that is going to be
nice.
friendly and has some indoor space and some outdoor space. And there will be some game nights. So exciting stuff happening with Florida Cannabis Action Network, all about building your own personal community. We do want for the last minute, is there any other news for us that I should be remembering? Because I do want to do a little bit on the federal update. I know people are interested in what is happening with federal rescheduling and how that is impacting, and I wanted to kind of wrap up with what's happening at the federal level. First of all, okay, we are starting to see some of the agencies revise their positions on cannabis by agencies. At this point, I'm referring to not just federal agencies, but also state and local agencies.
Welcome to. Sorry.
That's okay. So first, probably the one that happened most recently is TSA has made some announcements about carrying cannabis and what they're looking for. Now, the TSA did not say that you can carry whatever marijuana you want, any place you want. Don't worry about it. What TSA has said is that looking for cannabis is not their number one priority. If they find cannabis that appears to be outside of what they accept as your medicine, you're likely to still have an encounter with local law enforcement. And that, so we're still monitoring that very closely. ATF has also announced that they have started the process of removing the exception for people who are using cannabis from being able to purchase guns. That's something that Florida Cannabis Action Network has been on the forefront of challenging, whether or not a patient who is lawfully using cannabis should be denied their Second Amendment right. And it appears ATF agrees with us that they should not be denied their Second Amendment right. We're going to see that ATF form. Veterans Association is reviewing their policy on cannabis, and you may very well soon, if you are a veteran, be able to get your recommendation from your VA doctor. So lots of stuff happening federally. The 24th, which is Sunday, is the last day to send a note to the DEA on why you should be the person to speak at the conference and the hearings that's going to happen later on in June. June, of course, is when the DEA is going to be doing the hearings on the rescheduling of cannabis to Schedule 3 or less, or descheduling or whatever. So if you're following that, we have the next deadline is actually Sunday. And soon after that, we'll be finding out exactly who is going to be speaking at those hearings. Those hearings are scheduled to start at the end of June and run through the middle of July with a brief break for the 250th anniversary. Locally, we did see that school boards are beginning to engage in the discussion about removing cannabis from the prohibited substances for teachers. So that's excellent news. Florida Cannabis Action Network, with our pals at Suncoast Normal, have been championing bills the last few years in the Florida legislature that would allow for public employees to be protected with their medical cannabis use. And it appears that the rescheduling of cannabis has kind of made that discussion null and void. And now the various unions and other public service workers are going to be able to engage. We did do a call to action last week reminding union members and public employees, that would be if you work for the city or if you work for the county, if you're an EMT, firefighter, police, all of these various organizations have employment contracts. Each of those employment contracts are going to say something a little bit different about what their employees can do. And Alex, you and I are going to take on Duval and Clay County school boards this week to try and get some clarification on what they're going to be doing. So tune in for next week. We'll have a little bit more information on what school boards, at least in Duval and Clay, are going to be doing in terms of protecting their employees. And hopefully we'll be able to give our supporters some tips on how they can impact that process.
Be awesome. Yeah, looking forward to that.
Excellent. The last thing that I wanted to get into is whether or not we're going to be able to cross state lines with our medicine. This has become kind of a dialogue. When I saw this, I went, yay, now I can travel to Maine with my cannabis from Florida. And I thought that seemed like a no-brainer, that would just automatically be the thing. But the more I say that, the more pushback I'm getting. So have you guys been getting questions about travel between the states? Are you guys getting any feedback on that?
we've always received this question with the rescheduling. We're getting it more, same kind of thing. From the patient side of things, they're all assuming that it's now automatically, they saw the TSA now isn't upsetting. So in their minds, they're like, well, I'm crossing state lines. I'm good. But like you, I'm seeing more pushback in places, and I don't think it's as clear cut as we're all hoping that is.
Well, and to add that we have a lot of folks here in Florida who like to take cruises, and this does not change anything about going into international waters. So, you know, as much as we hope it's going to make some changes and be able to cross state lines, there are still going to be some restrictions beyond that because there are treaties and Mike, where are you? You know, and there are other things at play that will make that another hoop to jump through.
I think
I was just astounded. Go ahead.
maybe it depends on the state too, because like here in Florida we have no reciprocity, you know, but in Arizona, if you are now they have rec, but even before they had rec, if you were a medical patient from another state and you were found with, you weren't supposed to cross state lines, but if you were found with it in their state, you were okay. So maybe it is still depending on state to state, which makes things very confusing, but.
Well, I was just astounded. I brought this up we had this dialogue with some of the doctors' offices because, of course, the doctors are going to be one of the first, points of contact with people where they're going to be asking, can I travel with my cannabis? And I was like, well, yes. To me, it's just a no-brainer. Now I did put some caveats in it. I said, well, first of all, we heard from Rep Black last year that he wanted it to be in a locked box and, blah, 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 blah. And I didn't go that far, but I did think, okay, now it would probably need to be, if I'm going to travel with it across state lines, it would probably need to be in its original container. I would have to have my card or my paperwork that says that I am a lawful patient. Not every state has cards, but most states that don't have cards, at least they have a form that the doctor fills out that the patient carried. Have that with me. And I would want it to not be within reach of the driver. And of course, you couldn't be acting impaired. But I'm like, well, if it's not within reach of the driver and I'm not acting impaired and I'm not using it while I'm driving down the road, so my car doesn't reek, why in the world would a law enforcement officer ever even know that I had it? So, there is some of that and being responsible with it. As I started talking about this, one of the guys says, oh, no, we can't have that. There's the Commerce Clause. And I thought, echoes back to talk it out with Benny Blanchard and how the Commerce Clause gets involved in this. And I thought, how in the world can someone say that my purchasing medicine in Florida and taking it with me to Georgia is going to impact commerce? Because I can't buy a pot in Georgia anyhow. They don't have a system that's going to dispense to me. And then I thought, can you imagine telling a patient, okay, I know you're going to Maine for 2 weeks, you're flying there, don't take your Vicodin, because the Vicodin that you purchased in Florida is going to adversely affect the commerce in Maine. And so when you get to Maine, find a CVS in Maine and get a 2-week supply of Vicodin. That's crazy. It's crazy talk. It's crazy talk. But I did step out yesterday and sent a letter to the Florida Attorney General on behalf of Florida Cannabis Action Network asking for this clarification. So we'll see. I'm going to continue to pester the governor on this just a little bit. I think Floridians need to know whether or not they can travel. And the U.S. Attorney General isn't going to give me clarification, but he certainly might give the Attorney General of Florida clarification. And the other thing that people need to know is if they're traveling to Florida, is the Florida Attorney General going to instruct law enforcement and prosecutors, pardon me, not to prosecute patients who come to Florida? We've been very vocal in the tourism space. We know we want people to be able to come to Florida. We want to know that people are using medical marijuana in all 50 states, and we want them to be able to come and have a great adventure and be safe here in Florida. So that's the news for this week. Is there anything else that you would like to share before we're done? Excellent. So I think we've covered some great ground, excellent science, and very interesting stuff about what's happening there at the receptor level. Thank you very much for sharing what's news and how the terpenes are affecting us, Colette, and how we can make the most of our experience with cannabis. Steve bringing us that great, interesting story about Virginia and how that really, there's two sides to every story, and there's a lot of nuanced details, and we need to really get to the nitty gritty. I will remind everybody that in Florida we have a Republican House, a Republican Senate, and a Republican governor, and yet we are in our special session. So when you are talking to candidates in your community, let's find out what they're going to do about the log jam that is costing Florida taxpayers. And then let's find out what in the hell they're going to do with that other $40 million that's coming from the sick of the sick. Because I know that if each and every one of us were paying $30 for a card instead of $75, they would still have enough in the Florida budget to cover their expenses. And with that, I'm going to sign off. This is Elevated Intel. We hope you've enjoyed the show today. I thank you, Alex, Steve, and Colette, for joining me. We are Florida Cannabis Action Network, and we invite you to join us. Thanks for being here.